Have you ever known somebody or said yourself that you will not main a class that doesn't have an invincibility frame? My guess is probably, because many people consider it to be an essential mechanic for bossing. While an iframe can be an amazing life-saving tool, other boss mechanics can make one not even necessary when used properly. In my own opinion, there are two different types of iframes, fake and dedicated. A dedicated is like what my main Dawn Warrior has, a button that its only purpose is to give you an iframe. Then there are fake iframes, generally long cooldowns tied to your burst in some way, in Buccaneer's case, Howling Fist and their Spirit Bombs. It's not ideal to save these for the explicit purpose of using them as an iframe, and instead, these are meant to protect your burst and keep you alive, not used as a reactive tool. And yet, despite the fact that Dawn Warrior has other tools as well as a dedicated iframe on a pretty low cooldown with multiple charges, I consider Buccaneer to be a relatively safer character to boss on. Which will take us right into the first mechanic. Damage reduction that works on percent HP attacks. This is one of Buccaneer's main survival tools, and in a lot of cases is going to be way more valuable than any iframe ever could be because the sheer amount of things it's going to save you from. It is not unique to Buccaneers, but they have one of the better instances of it outside of a class like Paladin or Mahil. Also, every Cygnus Knight has access to it through their Cygnus Blessing once they reach level 245. Even the low 5% reduction that Cygnus Knights get is capable of saving you from so many attacks, given that a lot of attacks from bosses are rated to do exactly 100% HP damage. There are so many more useful situations, however, because there are many bosses that their main threat is actually a lot of chip damage coming at you at once, and you reduce enough of those attacks by 5, 10, 15, whatever percent, that will allow you to take many more hits, which are often designed to be perfectly threatening within the normal potion cooldown. Which takes us right into life regen, lifesteal, and healing. I'm bundling the three of these together because they're all pretty similar mechanics with different levels of effectiveness and rarity. They are all going to do mostly the exact same thing though, which is stopping chip damage from killing you over time, just as the percent HP reduction did. And in Buccaneer's case, they not only have the percent HP damage reduction coming on and off, but they also have natural health regen. 5% health restored every 4 seconds may not sound like a lot, but that is enough to be very significant in something like Will Phase 1, or through the entirety of a fight like Dark Knell, where they are very chip damage heavy. And as I mentioned earlier, these fights are meant to be reasonably threatening by that chip damage within the normal potion cooldown, so anything that offsets that damage in your favor in any way can be pretty significant. Classes with passive lifesteal like Abraham, Dual Blade, or Demon Slayer are incredibly effective at ignoring this because they heal so much, and Bowmaster can sacrifice a little bit of damage to have the best lifestealing in the entire game. But what about just avoiding damage in the first place and not needing healing? Well, that's where general mobility tools come in, and obviously there are some that are a little bit more apparent, like Buccaneer's Dash, Aran's Dash, or being able to move while you do your main bossing attack like Bowmaster with their Hurricane, where they can jump, move, and even stop midair and flash jump. If there's one rule I can tell you about bossing, it is always bind your movement skills. Always. It doesn't matter how useless it seems like it is, or if it seems like you have something better, like Dawn Warrior's Teleport versus their Rush. Almost every tool or attack that has some mobility component to it will have some advantage over some other similar tool in your kit, so it is important to bind every single one of them on your hotbar. And if you haven't found a use for it, it's only because you likely have not thought of it yet. In general, a good mobility tool such as Buccaneer's incredibly versatile Dash will make an iframe almost unnecessary. What if instead you just want to stand your ground and take the hits? Well, that is where Super Stance comes in. This is not a mechanic that is officially named by the game in any way, but it's something that is very common in other games. This is a mechanic that will allow you to resist any knockback attack because, as we know, every character these days has 100% knockback resistance against regular just body hits and stuff. Bosses, however, have many attacks that bypass that and send you flying often to your doom by getting hit by multiple other attacks. In many cases such as Lotus, the damage from this attack can be incredibly threatening, but the knockback is way scarier. A class like Shadower has natural super stance while they're doing their assassinate, albeit with some gaps of vulnerability. This is such an amazing tool for survivability. Warriors have access to it through the 5th job skill Impenetrable Skin. Heroes get it during their burst through their skill Cry Valhalla. This is a tool that will not only save your life during fights like Magnus, Lotus, Will, Dark Knell, and many others, but it is also going to increase your DPS by allowing you to be a little bit more aggressive than other classes would. And something that I find is a lot lesser known is that many classes have access to a soft super stance. Mobility skills, even something as simple as Nightwalker's Backstab. If you use this at the exact moment that you would otherwise go flying, not only will you resist the knockback, but you can also resist the stun. This can take very precise timing, but it is such a good tool to have in your arsenal. A lot of the times, however, Nightwalker is not going to need anything but their incredible incredibly powerful Dark Sight. Dark Sight is probably one of the best, if not the best, bossing tool in the game. Learning Dark Sight's uses is not always completely intuitive. You know, everyone knows debris, physical debris falling from the sky. For the most part, all of that can be dodged by Dark Sight. However, when you get to weird things like the floor from Papulatus's fight, or even the application of his time debuff, yeah, that part's a little bit weird and doesn't really make much sense, but hey, we'll take it. Several thieves have the option to stay in Dark Sight for extended periods of time and essentially use it to just be extremely aggressive without needing to worry about mechanics that would otherwise kill most classes. Shadower can use their Shadow Veil under a Damien that is using their meteors to keep jumping up and getting DPS in them, while most other classes just have to sit and wait. In the Lotus fight, someone with Dark Sight can enable it and freely flash jump across the entire map to a safety platform and not have to worry about getting stunned by any debris. Nearly every boss has a mechanic that can be dodged by Dark Sight, and quite frankly, Dark Sight really deserves its own video, and I probably will do that sometime. Mages, on the other hand, and some other classes, are capable of dodging attacks in less stealthy ways. Teleport is the main mobility tool of the mage class. Well, for the most part, not every mage has one. Having a teleport allows you to dodge a lot of different boss attacks very easily and very quickly. The fact that it's instant gives it a massive leg up over other mobility tools like flash jump. Most teleports have the privilege of being off global cooldown, meaning you can do it immediately after you do an attack. That is a privilege that a lot of classes don't have. Some uses of teleport are very apparent, such as teleporting through Lotus's lasers. Then there's something perhaps a little bit less appreciated, like being able to easily manipulate what platform Guardian Angel Slime is standing on by easily moving up and down. Many projectile attacks will also be able to be teleported through, even some charge attacks if your timing is impeccable. The most important factor, at least in my opinion, of teleport is being able to always stay behind your boss doing your best impression of playing Dark Souls. For many bosses, behind them as they're doing an attack is always the safest place to stand, with teleport mechanics being one of the best ways to accomplish that. Now, as a little side note, I've been maining Dawn Warrior since the beginning of Reboot, and they're a lot more popular than they used to be. People like to call them OP, and I think one of the strongest things about them is this teleport. Now we move into a similar mechanic, teleporters, specifically ones where you activate a teleporter point with the key and then subsequent presses will teleport you to that point. Blaze Wizards have a kind of janky one, Ho Young has one, Mechanic, and probably some other classes as well. Their uses are probably less apparent than any other boss mechanic in the game. You have to be a little bit creative to make the most use out of these. Don't have any debuffs to guess which side Vellum teleported to? Put a teleporter down on one side of Vellum's arena and run to the opposite. That way, no matter which side you go to, you are going to be safe. Put a teleporter on the opposite side of Gollix's head. That way, whenever he does his soul breath, you can teleport to safety. Keep one at the top or the bottom during the Lucid fight. That way you can be safe from the dragon, although it doesn't work very good in phase 1 because you will teleport through all the golems and just destroy yourself. Bosses that charge at you can keep the teleporter on the other side of the boss that you're fighting on. That way you can just teleport to it whenever they charge you. You can also keep the teleporter on one side of the Damien fight, lure the balls to the other side and teleport to it to instantly start getting some damage in without having to run and let the balls catch up to you a bit. Or perhaps you're a wind archer and you have that amazingly useful taunt. This taunt actually has a special mechanic where it slows around it, which actually affects Damien's orbs. However, we're not here to specifically talk about Wind Archer's taunt, just taunts in general. Wind Archer just has that nice little interaction which is very useful for cheesing the Damien fight. However, taunts regularly, such as Marksman and Wind Archer have, are capable of drawing the boss's aggro and making many fights laughably easy. If the boss completely interacts with your taunt, they are just rendered worthless. They're focusing on a borderline immortal dummy that you can just keep replacing, leaving you free to DPS it without worry. Gollix is one of the most hilariously abused bosses by taunts, and he is just completely cheesed. Not every boss will be affected the same, but most you will find will be impacted by a taunt at some point, and when you're soloing, goddamn, it just makes the bosses a joke. Now, I'm not going to mention Hero's Will because every class has access to it, and really that one actually deserves a video on its own because, well, it's crazy, and I will make a video on it because I think people don't utilize it enough. Even I don't utilize it enough. There are many times where I die, and it could have saved my life. These are just the mechanics that I feel are probably present in most classes in the game, at least in some way, shape, or form. And there are some mechanics that I didn't mention, like Flight, that like Ilium has, or Ho Young slightly has. Those really just fall under the general mobility category. They're just a lot more specialized. The mechanics I did feature on this list are the ones that will make make an iframe not necessary if used properly. There will of course always be some bosses that put you in borderline unwinnable situations, you know, like Dark Knell can kind of sometimes, Hard Lotus, even some of the bosses that I myself haven't reached yet, you know, like Kalos or Black Mage. I don't know anything about those boss fights because I'm pure solo progression, so it's going to take me a bit to get there. Maybe an iframe becomes necessary for those. It's going to take me a bit to find out for myself. So thank you to my members and my patrons. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.